Right, let's talk about Donald Trump. Honestly, where do you even begin? It's like trying to describe a hurricane by counting the raindrops. For the better part of a decade, the man has been a constant churning vortex of scandal, controversy, and legal drama. Trying to keep up with it all is a full-time job, and frankly, a job that probably comes with a complimentary bottle of antacids and a recommendation for a good therapist. He is less a political figure and more a national phenomenon of perpetual chaos, a man who seems to generate headlines the way a golden retriever sheds hair, constantly and on everything you own. It's exhausting, it's confusing, and it's profoundly important to understand. The reason he's perpetually in the news for all the wrong reasons is not some vast conspiracy by the lamestream media, as he would have you believe. It's because his public record is a sprawling, documented history of questionable actions, outright falsehoods, and behavior that would get anyone else fired from a mid-level management position at a regional paper supply company. From courtrooms in New York to the Oval Office itself, his career has been defined by pushing boundaries, legal, ethical, and constitutional. This isn't about political disagreements over tax policy. This is about the fundamental character and conduct of a person who has held and seeks to hold again the most powerful office on the planet. This essay is an attempt to catalog the storm. We will take a deep, steadying breath and dive into the record. We'll look at the court judgments against him, the relentless, corrosive lies about our elections, and the deeply troubling statements he's made that reek of racism and sexism. We'll examine his administration's more recent actions in 2025, which seem to be ripped straight from the playbook of Project 2025, a plan that sounds less like a policy proposal and more like the title of a dystopian young adult novel, where the plucky teenage protagonist has to save the Republic from a deranged overlord. It's a lot, I know, but we have to look. Ultimately, this is not just an exercise in recounting past and present grievances. It's about understanding the stakes. The words and actions of a leader, especially one with such a flagrant disregard for established norms, have consequences that ripple through the very fabric of a nation. They set a precedent for what is acceptable, what is normal, and what a country is willing to tolerate from its leadership. So, let's put on our waders, venture into the flood of information, and try to make sense of the man who has, for better or for worse, defined an entire era of American politics. And let's be honest, it's almost entirely for worse. Let's start with the place Donald Trump seems to spend as much time as his golf courses, the courtroom. His legal troubles are not a recent development. They are a lifelong companion. Long before he was president, his business career was littered with lawsuits with more than 4,000 filed by or against him and his companies. But his post-presidency has taken this to a whole new level. We've seen him become the first former president to be criminally convicted, found guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment to an adult film star. His response? To attack the judge, the jury, and the entire justice system, calling it a rigged, disgraceful trial. That's not just sour grapes, it's attempting to poison the well of American justice. Beyond that landmark criminal case, the civil judgments have been piling up like unpaid bills. A New York jury found him liable for sexual abuse and defamation against the writer E. Jean Carroll, ordering him to pay her a staggering $83.3 million. His defense in that case often involved insulting the plaintiff and the legal process itself. Then, there's the civil fraud case, where a judge ruled that Trump and his company had engaged in years of financial fraud, inflating his net worth to get better loan terms. The penalty was a fine of over $450 million. His reaction wasn't one of contrition, but of defiance, framing himself as a victim of a political witch hunt, a phrase he uses so often it should be embroidered on a pillow. These aren't just isolated incidents. They form a clear, undeniable pattern. When faced with legal accountability, Trump's strategy is consistent: deny everything, attack the accusers, and undermine the institutions designed to hold him accountable. He has called judges deranged and prosecutors racist, creating a narrative where he is the persecuted hero and the rule of law is the villain. This has real-world consequences. As we've seen in 2025, his hand-picked Attorney General Pam Bondi has openly threatened judges, stating she works at the directive of Donald Trump and warning the judiciary, "We will come after you and we will prosecute you." This is not how a justice system in a democracy is supposed to function. The sheer volume of these cases, from financial fraud to sexual abuse to election interference, paints a portrait of a man who believes the rules simply do not apply to him. His own words, captured in depositions and courtroom tirades, serve as the primary evidence. He is not a passive victim of a politicized system. He is an active participant who has spent decades bending and breaking rules for personal and political gain. Now, with the power of the presidency once again at his disposal, his disdain for legal constraints has been supercharged, transforming from a personal problem into a national crisis for the rule of law itself. If Donald Trump's career has a central unifying theme, it is the lie. Specifically, the big lie, the demonstrably false claim that the 2020 election was stolen from him. This wasn't just a fleeting complaint. It was a deliberate, sustained, and incredibly destructive campaign to undermine the cornerstone of American democracy-free and fair elections. He repeated the lie endlessly, telling his supporters, "We won this election, and we won it by a landslide." He didn't. Joe Biden won by over 7 million votes and a clear electoral college majority. But the facts never mattered as much as the feeling of grievance he was selling, a potent cocktail of betrayal and victimhood. This lie wasn't harmless. It directly fueled the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, an event he watched on television, reportedly with approval. He told the crowd beforehand to fight like hell, and they did. The lie has since become a litmus test for Republican loyalty. To be in Trump's good graces, you must deny reality. We saw this in January 2025, when his Attorney General Pam Bondi refused to acknowledge Joe Biden's 2020 victory during her Senate confirmation hearing. It's a foundational belief of his movement, a required rejection of empirical evidence in favor of unwavering faith in him. It's the political equivalent of insisting the sky is green. But the election denialism is just one facet of a broader pattern of racist, sexist, and frankly anti-Christian behavior that contradicts the values he claims to champion. His public statements are a treasure trove of prejudice. He launched his first presidential campaign by calling Mexican immigrants rapists. He has a long history of making sexist and demeaning comments about women, from criticizing their looks to bragging about sexual assault in the infamous Access Hollywood tape. For a man who courts the evangelical vote, his personal conduct and crude language often stand in stark contrast to the Christian values of humility, honesty, and compassion he supposedly embraces. This behavior isn't a bug, it's a feature. It serves to divide, to stoke anger, and to rally his base against a common enemy, whether that enemy is an immigrant, a female journalist, or a political opponent. He thrives on conflict and outrage. At a cabinet meeting in April 2025, Pam Bondi went so far as to falsely claim Trump was overwhelmingly elected by the biggest majority, a blatant falsehood given he won by the narrowest popular vote margin in over half a century. This constant stream of misinformation isn't just about ego, it's a strategic assault on the very idea of shared truth, without which a democratic society cannot function. Now, if you thought the first term was a chaotic, norm-shattering roller coaster, you might want to buckle up because there's a plan for the sequel, and it's called Project 2025. This isn't some secret manifesto. It's a nearly 1,000-page document written by a coalition of right-wing think tanks, and it's essentially an instruction manual for dismantling the modern U.S. government and consolidating power in the hands of the president. It reads less like a policy document and more like a villain's monologue outlining their plan for total domination. The project's stated goal is to prepare a conservative administration to govern from day one, but its core proposals are radical and deeply authoritarian. The plan calls for firing up to 50,000 career civil servants, the nonpartisan experts who keep the government running, from food safety inspectors to national security analysts, and replacing them with political loyalists. This is the Schedule F plan Trump tried to implement at the end of his first term. The idea is to destroy the independence of the civil service and ensure that the entire federal bureaucracy answers not to the law or the Constitution, but directly to the president. It's a recipe for corruption, incompetence, and the weaponization of government agencies against political enemies, something we are already seeing hints of in 2025. The project also advocates for bringing independent agencies, like the Department of Justice and the Federal Reserve, under direct presidential control. This would shatter the long-standing tradition of an independent justice system, turning the FBI and federal prosecutors into the president's personal enforcement arm. Imagine a president being able to order the DOJ to investigate his rivals or stop investigations into his friends. That's not a hypothetical, it's the goal. The entire framework of Project 2025 is built on a legal theory called the unitary executive theory, which posits that the president has absolute control over the entire executive branch, a theory that most legal scholars find to be a dangerous misreading of the Constitution. This isn't just a theoretical threat. The Trump administration in 2025 has already begun to put these ideas into practice. The constant pressure on the judiciary, the demands for absolute loyalty from cabinet members, and the attempts to politicize national security are all hallmarks of the Project 2025 agenda. His allies openly talk about using the government to punish their enemies and reward their friends. This is a direct challenge to the American system of checks and balances, an attempt to transform the presidency from one of three co-equal branches of government into a singular, all-powerful authority. It is, in short, a roadmap to autocracy. Talk is cheap, but actions have consequences, and honestly, the actions of the Trump administration in 2025 have shown a chilling willingness to disregard the U.S. Constitution. The separation of powers, the rule of law, and basic human rights have all been treated as mere suggestions rather than, foundational principles. Take, for example, the administration's new immigration policies. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, a key Trump ally, has brokered deals to send Venezuelan migrants to be jailed in El Salvador, a country with a, dubious human rights record. This has been done in open defiance of U.S. court orders demanding a halt to the practice, a stunning rejection of judicial authority. This contempt for the judiciary is a recurring theme. When judges have requested communications about these wrongly detained migrants, Rubio has simply refused to comply. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi has made it her mission to intimidate the judicial branch, threatening judges who rule against the administration's agenda. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a direct assault on the independence of the courts, a cornerstone of American liberty. The message is clear. If you are a judge, you either rule in our favor, or we will come after you. This is the kind of behavior one expects in a banana republic, not the United States of America. The administration's power grabs extend beyond the judiciary. Bondi has also supported Trump's claim that he has sole authority over federal spending, even when it means freezing funds that have been explicitly approved by Congress. This completely upends the constitutional balance of power, which gives the power of the purse to the legislative branch. It's a move toward an imperial presidency, where the executive can simply ignore the will of the people's elected representatives. This is not a partisan squabble. It is a fundamental attack on the structure of American government, as laid out by the framers. Then there is the issue of the Emoluments Clause, a part of the Constitution designed to prevent presidents from being corrupted by foreign governments. In a flagrant dismissal of this clause, AG Bondi approved a gift of a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar for Trump's use, both as Air Force One and for his personal travel and future presidential library. The fact that Bondi herself was a former lobbyist for Qatar makes the whole affair even more sordid. The legal justification was flimsy, but the message was potent. This administration believes it is above the Constitution, free to take massive gifts from foreign powers without consequence. If you thought the constitutional abuses were alarming, wait until you see how this administration handles national security. It's like watching a toddler juggle lit dynamite. The most glaring example is the Signalgate security breach of March 2025. In a move of staggering incompetence, a group of the nation's highest-ranking security officials, including Vice President J.D. Vance, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and the directors of the CIA and Defense, decided to discuss a planned United States military strike against Houthi targets in Yemen. And they did it in a Signal group chat. An encrypted chat, sure, but a group chat nonetheless. And guess what? It was leaked to a journalist in real time. Let that sink in. The country's top-secret military planning was being live-tweeted, metaphorically speaking, because his senior team treated state secrets with the same care as a group of friends planning a brunch. This is not just embarrassing, it's catastrophically dangerous. It jeopardizes military operations, puts American lives at risk, and signals to our allies and adversaries that the United States government is amateurish and leaky. This kind of recklessness stems directly from a culture of impunity and a disregard for established protocols, a culture that starts at the very top. When the leader treats norms with contempt, It's no surprise his subordinates follow suit. The politicization of our intelligence and defense agencies is another deeply worrying trend. The administration has reportedly begun purging officials at the National Security Agency, not for incompetence, but for perceived disloyalty. The accusations came from Laura Loomer, a far-right conspiracy theorist and Trump advisor, turning personnel decisions at our most sensitive spy agencies into a political loyalty test. Furthermore, the administration's budget proposals have included cuts that could lead to the dismissal of thousands of FBI employees and dozens of CIA officers, including many involved in counterterrorism and the investigation into the January 6th attack. This is a transparent attempt to weaken the institutions that might hold him accountable, and the disregard for basic security protocols continues. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and a senior aide were found to have used personal Gmail accounts for government business, including discussions about sensitive military positions and weapons systems. This is the very thing Trump and his allies spent years attacking Hillary Clinton for. The hypocrisy is breathtaking, but the danger is real. Using private email for official, classified business creates a massive security vulnerability. It demonstrates a pattern of behavior where personal convenience and political loyalty are prioritized over the safety and security of the United States. Beyond the legal cases and policy decisions, there is another dimension to Donald Trump's public life that deserves scrutiny: his personal behavior. It is a relentless series of moments that have left many Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, simply stunned. This isn't about a president having a policy you disagree with. It's about behavior that shatters the basic expectations of dignity and decorum we once had for the office. He has consistently used language and engaged in actions that are, to put it mildly, deeply shocking and profoundly unpresidential. His brand is built on outrage, and he is a master of generating it. Perhaps nothing exemplifies this more than his public comments about his own daughter, Ivanka. On multiple occasions, he has made statements that are unsettlingly sexual in nature. He famously said on The View, "If Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her." He has commented on her body and mused about her in ways that are wildly inappropriate for any father, let alone a public figure on a national stage. These are not isolated gaffes. They are part of a pattern of objectifying women, but the fact that he directs this behavior toward his own daughter takes it to a level of bizarre that is truly in a class of its own. His lack of empathy is another shocking trait that has been on full display. Think of him tossing paper towels into a crowd of hurricane survivors in Puerto Rico as if he were shooting free throws, or his constant mocking of a disabled reporter, an act of cruelty so blatant it seemed like a parody of a movie villain. He has attacked Gold Star families, prisoners of war like John McCain, and anyone who doesn't show him complete and total adoration. This isn't the behavior of a strong leader. It's the behavior of a deeply insecure individual who cannot tolerate dissent or criticism, and whose first instinct is to lash out with personal, often cruel insults. This penchant for shock value serves a purpose. It distracts from substantive issues, it keeps the media spotlight firmly on him, and it delights a base that enjoys seeing him trigger the libs. But it comes at a tremendous cost. It coarsens public discourse, normalizes cruelty, and erodes the very idea that leaders should possess some measure of character, grace, or basic human decency. When the President of the United States behaves in a way that would get a student suspended from high school, it diminishes the office and the nation he is supposed to represent on the world stage. When evaluating a political leader, there is no more reliable evidence than their own words and their own actions. In the case of Donald Trump, the record is vast, it is public, and it is damning. You don't need to rely on anonymous sources or political opponents' interpretations. You just need to listen to what he says and look at what he does. His entire public life is a broadcast of his character and intentions. He tells you exactly who he is, over and over again. And what he tells us is that he is a man who holds truth in contempt, who sees the law as an obstacle, and who views the presidency not as a public trust, but as a tool for personal enrichment and vengeance. His own recorded words are the most powerful indictment. "I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president." This statement, made during his first term, is not a legal argument. It is the assertion of a dictator. His declaration on the Access Hollywood tape, "When you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab 'em by the pussy," was not just locker room talk. It was a confession of his attitude toward women and power, an attitude later corroborated by a jury that found him liable for sexual abuse. His repeated claims that elections are rigged unless he wins are a direct assault on the democratic process, spoken from his own mouth. The actions of his administration, both past and present, confirm this worldview. The effort to overturn the 2020 election was not a hidden conspiracy. It was a public campaign involving lawsuits, pressure on state officials, and a rally that culminated in violence. The recent 2025 moves, defying court orders, consolidating government data into a single massive database, and weaponizing the State Department to revoke visas based on social media posts, are not subtle shifts in policy. They are bold, autocratic power grabs executed in plain sight. These are the documented actions of a government that sees constitutional limits as annoyances to be bypassed. This is not a matter of style or a simple case of a bull in a china shop. It is a fundamental and deliberate rejection of the principles that have governed the United States for over 2 centuries. The evidence is not hidden in classified documents. It is available in news reports, court transcripts, and video clips that anyone can access. The record shows a consistent pattern of behavior that prioritizes personal loyalty over expertise, personal gain over public service, and authoritarian impulses over democratic norms. To ignore this mountain of evidence is not just naive, it is a willful blindness to a clear and present danger. So, after wading through this torrent of lawsuits, lies, and constitutional crises, we are left with a simple, crucial question. Why does any of this matter? It matters because the United States is, at its core, an idea. It's the idea that no one is above the law, that power should be constrained by checks and balances, and that the country is governed by a shared set of facts and a mutual respect for the democratic process. Donald Trump's entire public record represents a direct assault on that idea. His presidency is a stress test for the very foundations of the American Republic, and the warning lights are flashing red. This isn't about being a Republican or a Democrat. It's about the kind of country Americans want to live in. Do they want a country where the justice system is an independent arbiter of fact, or one where it is a weapon to be used by the powerful against their enemies? Do they want a country where elections are seen as a sacred and legitimate expression of the people's will, or one where their validity is constantly questioned to soothe the ego of a losing candidate? Do they want a leader who respects the Constitution, or one who openly states his belief that he has the right to do whatever he wants? The facts laid out here, the criminal convictions, the civil judgments for fraud and sexual abuse, the documented lies about elections, the autocratic maneuvers of his 2025 administration, and the shocking personal conduct are not just a collection of scandals. They are a clear and consistent portrait of a leader who is fundamentally at odds with the principles of a democratic society. They reveal a character for whom loyalty is a one-way street, truth is transactional, and power is an end in itself, not a means to serve the public good. America stands at a crossroads, and the future of its democracy may very well depend on how its citizens reckon with this record. Ignoring it, downplaying it, or becoming numb to it is a luxury the country cannot afford. The evidence is clear, the pattern is undeniable, and the stakes could not be higher. What happens next will determine whether the American experiment, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall endure, or whether it will perish from the earth, not with a bang, but with a constant, exhausting, and ultimately corrosive barrage of scandal and lies. Will we choose autocracy, or will we choose democracy?